And we are live. Welcome to everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I am Frank Butterfield, Chief Operating Officer, and you all are in for an excellent presentation today. We'll give it a few minutes so everyone can join us and check their settings. And in the meantime, I'll go over a few housekeeping items while everyone is coming into the live stream. If you would like to read what the presenter is saying, real-time closed captions are available. To access them, go to the bottom of your screen and click the CC Closed Captions button. There will be a Q&A at the end of the program. Please post your questions in the chat, which is also at the bottom of your screen. And I believe we are ready to get started. So good afternoon and welcome to the second installment of our Fall Preservation Snapshots presentation series. My name is Frank Butterfield, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Landmarks Illinois. This lecture series features great presenters close to preservation projects and topics important to people. Photographer and writer Sandra Steinbrecher spent nearly 2 years capturing the deconstruction, reconstruction, and revitalization of Chicago's historic Morton Salt Warehouse. This 1929 landmark, a symbol of the city's industrial grit, has been reborn through one of the most remarkable restoration projects of the 21st century. Today, Landmarks Illinois President and CEO Bonnie McDonald will host a conversation with Sandra Steinbrecher, whose newly released book takes viewers behind the scenes of the salt shed's transformation. Before we get started, I'd like to welcome those who may be joining us for the first time and tell you about Landmarks Illinois. Landmarks Illinois is a statewide historic preservation nonprofit founded in 1971 to help save places important to them and their communities. Our advocacy team works on 150 to 200 projects at any given time, all across the state. Since our founding in 1971, we have helped save almost 24,000 places. Before starting our program, I would like to thank our dedicated and generous members and supporters. Your contributions to Landmarks Illinois directly result in our impact in communities across the state. This includes our generous Preservation Snapshot sponsors, C&H Specialty Craftworks, Jack Corp, and Vinci Hamp Architects. Their support enables we can host this lecture series to share preservation stories from across the state. A special thank you to our annual corporate sponsors, who are also our partners in preservation and support our work. If you or your company is interested in supporting Landmarks Illinois and our advocacy and programs, we would love to speak with you. Please contact our office, and again, thank you to our generous sponsors. Also, thank you to all the members of Landmarks Illinois who are joining us today. Membership support is essential to our success in advocacy, education, and programs. If you are not a member, please join us today at landmarks.org. If you've missed any of our past lectures, you can also visit our YouTube channel to see other great presentations and projects Landmarks Illinois is involved in. This is just a reminder, if you need the closed captioning, real-time closed captions are available. Click the CC closed caption button at the bottom of your screen. The presentation is being recorded and made available on our YouTube channel. Today's presentation will now start with our President and CEO, Bonnie McDonald. Welcome, Bonnie.
Thank you so much, Frank. And it is wonderful to be here to have this privilege to host a conversation with Sandra Steinbrecher, who it's been a privilege to know for several years and see her work on this project. But first, let me tell you more about her, and then we're going to bring Sandra onto the screen and have roughly a 35-minute conversation. But just to let everybody know, again, you can insert your questions into the Q&A, and we will leave some time at the end for any questions about this conversation. And I'm sure you're going to want to ask her some things about this really incredible project and the people behind it. So today, let me introduce you, though, to Sandra Steinbrecher, who is a Chicago-based documentary photographer who has been working on long-term assignments related to education, the arts, and community development. And for nearly 2 years, as Frank already noted, that she has been photographing the transformation of the iconic and former Morton Salt Complex that many of you who have traveled on the Kennedy might have seen that with of course, here you see the cover of the book with that iconic, the Morton Salt girl. This is along the Chicago River, and she has chronicled the photographs in an incredible book, which you see the cover of here, called The Salt Shed. She has photographed the changing seasons at the Japanese Garden as well in Chicago's Jackson Park, and created photo diaries of the daily life at several Chicago public schools. So as you can see, she's well-versed, and she's also highly acclaimed. Her work has been featured in several galleries, including the Smithsonian National Portrait Gallery, the Chicago Cultural Center, and at the University of Illinois. And her published photographs have appeared on the CNN national docuseries Chicagoland. She's been on Patagonia's blog, The Cleanest Line, and also in Smithsonian Magazine and the New York Times. So you can tell we are very lucky to have her with us today. Sandra is joining us to share her personal stories about the book, and I am delighted to be able to have this conversation with her. So with that, let me introduce you. Sandra, would you come on the screen and let us get our conversation started?
Thank you so much, Bonnie, for that nice introduction. And thanks to everyone who's joining today. It's really a thrill to talk to you.
Well, it is for me personally, everyone, because I had the great benefit of talking with Sandra early in this project. About 2 years ago, we sat down for coffee and had a conversation about what she was trying to do. And I think Sandra was talking about what this project meant to preservation and how it aligned with some of the work we are doing at Landmarks, really highlighting how people are at the center of preservation. People are the meaning and the intention of preservation. And this book truly highlights people who are doing the work, which is, I think, what sets it apart in so many ways. So you can see behind Sandra is there's a stack of these books, everyone. I'm just going to say I've got my copy right here, which I hope to get photographed, autographed by her at some point, but we're going to reference this. But I encourage you, after spending quite a bit of time looking through how it's assembled, it is a remarkable work, which we're going to highlight today. So, Sandra, I really think that the question on everybody's mind as they think about this project is, how did you begin? How did you begin this project? What attracted you to photographing the salt shed and the people behind it?
Well, like all of us in Chicago and beyond, and people who visit here, we've traveled and passed by this iconic sign, and this is the original one before they took off the roof panels. And so I had an opportunity to go and walk through the site in 2021 as I heard of the change that was going to happen and that it was going to be turned into a music venue. And I walked through and really had no plan for a long-term project, but the general contractor mentioned to me that the iconic roof panels, the original roof panels, were going to be removed, and they were going to, repair and replace some of the steel and put on new roof panels and then repaint the roof sign. And I just thought, as a documentary photographer, a Chicagoan, that it seemed like just a really important thing activity to photograph. And I was excited by it. And I said, hey, can I come back? And they said, okay, and I turned in my insurance. And then I just never left. Photographing that process of removing the roof panels really, really showed kind of the peeling back of the layers and what that might reveal in other ways. And I didn't know at the time, because I was very much trying to capture the activity, capture what was happening. And so I wasn't as concerned with a narrative as I was later on. But the beginning was full of trying to get to different vantage points to photograph the action. The photograph we just saw, which was of the steel worker literally burning through a piece of steel, was really this is the photograph that shows kind of my aha moment when I was standing there trying to capture this with all these sights and sounds and smells around me. And when I finished photographing this this action, I realized I had lost track of time. I was just very happy trying to capture this and thinking, I wish everyone could see what I'm seeing. And I think that's sort of the genesis of wanting to share work, is because it was so fascinating to me. I mean, I watched steel beams drop onto the shed floor, smoking after being cut through. So really got into the activity. And as time went on, I just kept trying to capture more and more activity. And, this photo shows really just about halfway through the roof process, what it takes to take off that roof.
Yeah.
Actually, just an aside, how people are very kind of have we all have an ownership sort of this roof. We pass by it, we love it. It sort of tells us where we are and where we're going, and there's a lot of memories associated with it. And so when anything happens to the roof, to the sign, people do either these days, it's on social media, what's happening. In the old days, people used to call up the plant manager and say, is everything okay with the sign? So it's always kind of been something that people pay attention to.
Yeah. So, the series of photos we've seen already is already something rare. Many people don't have the opportunity to see the process, how preservation unfolds. And, automatically you enter this book and the photos reveal the process. And that process is lengthy to have come to this end result. So many of us walk in at the end. We see it after, we see the before and we see the after, but we don't see the during, which is so remarkable about this project, to not only, see the structure, but the people who are transforming this place and their stories. So I love that your aha moment, your Zen that you're talking about, was seeing somebody doing the work. This idea of this place being an icon, some place that gives us a sense of orientation. That's exactly what preservation was meant to be. When it was imagined in the 1960s and we created the National Register of Historic Places, it was to present an orientation to society. So here we have the structure, but I think the orientation you're giving us is about the people who have done this work. So, what was it like for you to cover this for 2 years and to see all of these people who are doing this work?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think I'll pick up where I left off when the beginning. I was really trying to capture the activity, and I was drawn to the people and what they were doing. And then as time went on, I, as you do with documentary, either, photography or video or film, you create relationships. And, none of my work could have really happened without the relationships. So again, tied back to people. First, relationships with the owners who, graciously, the Blue Star 16 on Center salt shed folks who allowed me to be on site to come and go, and then the workers who allowed me to photograph them and started to open themselves up and to understand that I was doing something, even if they didn't know what would happen, that I was doing something that was positive in terms of trying to honor their work and show what their work was like. There's an immense amount of pride. And so creating these relationships, I think, was essential. There is a story, many stories that came up, but one is about the plumbing foreman, Danny, who I spoke to a lot over the last couple of years. And he comes from a family of plumbers. His grandfather, his uncle, his dad is a retired plumber. And he was the foreman on this project. And it was really, a lot of detective work, finding the historic pipes, seeing what could be used, realizing the vision of the owners to match, the structure and what was underneath the structure, and then doing the work in a way that he could be proud of. And I think what I saw was, one interesting thing is he would call his father on the way home from the job almost every day and talk over the challenges or the, triumphs, whatever had happened, and get his input too. So I saw Danny bringing to the project, which is important for really almost anything, is that he's bringing the knowledge of those who came before him, his dad, his grandpa, and then this pride of being a plumber, his work that was going to be covered, believe me, by layers and layers and layers of materials. He would make sure everything was as perfect as it could be. So I saw that with a lot of people, and his story is always a good example of that, and kind of the care that people took. So, the steel workers told me that they could really see the difference in the materials. So, coming back to preservation and the sustainability and the quality and integrity of the material. So not just the design and the architecture, but the materials that were used were really worth saving, even though some, did have to be taken down. There was, corrosion from years of exposure to salt. But still, with all that, after almost 100 years, you still have materials that are worth saving. And that was definitely noticed by people.
Yeah.
I will say one other with this photo of one of the plumbers underground. One of the things that was actually joyful for me was going to different vantage points. And one was underground with the plumbers and the electricians. And so here they are under the floor with working in dirt for hours and hours, like bent over, with only a few feet of head clearance, really in a sort of an environment that is rough, and we don't really think about plumbers in that way, right? And so, I went down under there and photographed them, or I would hang my camera down when I couldn't get under for whatever reasons, but I felt like I needed to go where they were going.
Yes. Well, that's a discussion that we've had as the project has evolved, and that your work is making in some ways, the unseen seen. So there are photos throughout the book, and I highlighted one that in particular, page 68, 69. If you all get the book, there's photos of those who are doing the work within the manhole. So the plumbers, also those who are doing fiber optics, are doing the work, and their work isn't seen. So this is a celebration of those whose hundreds of people in their hands who are doing this work, celebrating them. So I just am interested to hear how the people have reacted to the book. Those who are doing this, the tradespeople. Can you tell us about how they react to seeing themselves in a book like this?
Yeah, I think it's wonderful, actually. And that's one of the things that definitely makes me happy. And what I was thinking about when I was making the book is, I hope I do justice to the workers and what they've done. Like you mentioned, the man coming out of the manhole. I was out there, on the street with them, and it is so just for the scene. I mean, Elston right there is not super wide. There's a bike lane on each side. So you've got, people on this crowded street, angry drivers, bikers who are, a little upset that their bike lane is a mess. And they're trying to find, obstructions in the pipes, or prepare for water service or sewer service. And so just knowing they were going down there and doing the dirtiest, grimiest work to make sure there was water, make sure there was proper sewer lines. So again, seeing that, I do think people are very, very happy to see themselves. As soon as we got over the initial, what is she doing here? Are you from OSHA? Are you trying to catch me doing something wrong? Once they realized I was showing up day after day, really 4 days a week at least, for that
Wow.
most of definitely for a year and a half to 2 years. So I think it's like I said, there's an enormous sense of pride. And so, another story is a very small one, but one that also made me happy. I was walking. I like to walk the site during break time because it was a little more relaxed in terms of me talking to workers. I really couldn't interfere. So getting a chance to speak to them couldn't always happen during the workday. So break time was good. There were, I could see what people are having for lunch, which kind of reflected all the different cultures people come from.
Right.
And one day I was talking to two pipe fitters on their break, and one of them opens up his lunchbox and pulls out a sandwich and then pulls out a note. And the picture will come up probably pretty soon. But he was a note, a little love note from his 10-year-old daughter.
Oh,
And
oh.
just humanizing the workers. Again, we drive by construction sites and, we tend to be annoyed with it, or we're paying attention to the architecture and the beauty of the building, but who is it who is making these spaces so beautiful and comfortable for us? So it does take vision, on the part of developers and architects and engineers, but it also takes the labor and very, very skilled labor.
Absolutely. We were talking as we were just, discussing this conversation just about the years it takes to learn these crafts. That this is craft work. It takes skill, and that not only are the people on site doing this work, and as you said, making decisions in the moment. So we'd love to hear about seeing that. But they're teaching others at the same time. The journey people are teaching the apprentices. So that, this is a theme with this book, of course, or as you all will hopefully purchase this book and enjoy it as much as we have, you'll see that Sandra has laid out the themes that she discovered as a story of this place, from people to history to the steel, the material. So I'm interested in pulling back out for a moment, Sandra, and hearing, how did you come up with these themes? What unfolded for you? Tell us about, sort of the orient us to the book and how it lays out that story.
Well, I was, shooting, photographing, eventually starting to record conversations with people, very short, conversations on my phone, then uploading them and saving them, just knowing that there was so much interesting content and trying to collect it all myself. One note about, sort of physically, the site is pretty large. So I would, kind of run from vantage point to vantage point when things were happening to find the best place so we could see what was happening. And that was probably one of my main challenges. Also, that changed, as you know, on a construction site, the ground is literally shifting beneath your feet, with holes being dug and, windows being bricked off, stairs being removed. So I was constantly looking for where to go and how to go. But I think I saw on site often. So here's a photo of this, steelworkers. And I remember this is the north wall, which was in really poor condition when they started, and they kind of had to literally rebuild a frame to attach to the steel that was remaining there to stabilize it. And so some of the drawings just didn't, because of their historic, and there were drawings from over a number of years, some of them did not coordinate with what actually was on site. And so the iron workers or the plumbers or the electricians had to, make decisions on the spot. Obviously it was a collaboration, but I really saw a lot of incredible troubleshooting that also raised my appreciation for what tradespeople do. I don't think people realize how much goes on site. And even this photo, okay, you'd think of concrete people or cement masons. And I mean, the coordination this takes is really, truly amazing. I must have photographed cement pours about 12 times, all different places and spaces. And this one I put in, it's one of my favorite shots because they're all in motion. You really see the toll it takes on their bodies, number one, but they look like dancers to me. It's
Yeah.
a highly choreographed process. And, you know, so it is a craft. And you can see the younger people that they don't have as much maybe grace as the older, you know, people who've been doing it for
Hmm.
longer. So there's even, you know, some of those discrepancies. But even then, you know, they're doing things on the spot to make things safer, you know, keep to the sort of the regulations and the physical look of things. So there is so much going on in terms of the trades. And again, I think, you know, that's something that I wanted to show. Sometimes it was the simplicity of how something could look, you know, with angles and shadows. And so that's more of the artistic side of, you know, trying to compose and be in light that would be make it an interesting shot. And that's why there's so many sunrise and early morning shots as well, because of the light.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes,
this
there.
is
I mean, the
Annie,
photos
by the way.
are uh, the plumbing contractor Danny that you all heard about. And you know, there are hundreds of these stories. You know, we've had those experiences when, for example, we are giving an award to a project in a project team through our Landmarks Illinois Richard H. Driehaus Foundation Preservation Awards, which are coming up, by the way, on October 18th, everyone. Where we'll have someone who works on the project and they'll say, I mean, it sounds so amazing, but they'll say, my grandparent worked on, my grandfather, usually grandfather worked on this building. I'm working on the very same material that they put together, or I'm working on something that hands had put in place 120 years ago. And there's a reverence for this idea of stewardship, you know, of the care that one puts in that you've talked about, which I think up until this, you know, this book is in some ways, again, not celebrated. And your book is a celebration. It's a celebration of people and their incredible handwork, skill work. So we were discussing the really the crisis that we have in the construction industry right now, where 80, I think the resulting statistic is 86% of all general contractors have reported that they're having difficulty finding enough people to take these jobs, as there's attrition, retirement of the journey people, you know, the elders who are doing this. As they retire, we're losing people. And what they hear from young persons is that they don't want to enter the trades. The trades have now become something that is considered to be dirty work. And so this project is all about I think celebrating the story of those people who are transforming our city for everyone to enjoy. And that there's a pride and we need to get a sort of reverence for those who are actually doing the work. And so rarely are they celebrated. It's the designers who are celebrated, the architects and the engineers. But this work doesn't happen without the tradespeople who are doing it. So, you know, I loved how you talked about inviting the people in the photograph to the book launch. Can you talk about what their reactions were again?
Yeah, very, very proud to have been a part of a restoration project that, you know, they even said it was like, you know, a piece of art, the building, which it felt like to me as well. You know, I just want to go back for a second and talk about standing under all that steel, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
in the early days when it was still an open shed, both when half the roof was off and when the full roof was off, and it was just a frame like a skeleton. And so, you know, it's a kind of a majestic experience. You know, people
Mm-hmm.
have called it like a cathedral, or, you know, feel without being in a natural environment or in a, you know, in a real cathedral, it did have that sense of space. So people, I think the workers really felt like it was an interesting job, very much a part of Chicago, very much a part of our landscape. But yes, at the when they found out about the book, when they saw the book, like two of the ironworkers are quoted in my book. There's quotes
Hmm.
that lead off each chapter, as you'll see. And I quoted them. I wanted their words in there. I quoted the plumbing foreman because I wanted his voice in there. And then I quoted, an architect or a preservationist. And I wanted to
Hmm.
make sure that sort of the breadth of the people that are, there's so many people involved in this type of a project. So
Yeah.
they were really floored. I think they don't usually get. One iron worker said to me, this is the first building I've been in that I worked on, been in when it's completed.
Mm.
That was kind of shocking, surprising to me.
Yeah.
And, a couple of them also said, we don't usually get invited to these kind of, gatherings, events, or spaces. So, and they were celebrated by everyone there. It was, once you call attention to it, which is really, I guess, the power of photography or any kind of storytelling, is you're calling attention to something. And Bonnie, you're exactly right. That to me, this series of photographs is a celebration. I really think it celebrates
Hmm.
the spirit of preservation, the people who did the work, the sort of fight that sometimes it takes to save a space. If this place hadn't been, it probably would have been demolished, and it's a big site, so something really big would have gone up there. And then you're getting away from the human scale of and the fabric of our city.
Hmm.
So all those things point again back to the people. I did want to say a little
Yeah.
something about hands-on human touch. It's one of the early things I noticed. You see these giant cranes carrying, lifting big steel beams and lifting heavy materials. But every time there are human hands placing them, setting things. I mean, people's hands are on everything, and that was a huge revelation to me. I
Hmm.
don't know why I didn't really realize it, but not until I was on site did I see so much of humans being a part of this work. And I think
Yeah.
that was fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. We so appreciate your work because this idea of people, our tagline, people saving places for people, people being the central work at preservation, by and for by us for us. So we just showed the photo of the person with the note in their lunchbox, which is just delightful to see. This is obviously you put so many of your favorite experiences. It feels like into
Yeah.
this book. What are some other of your favorite experiences you want to tell us, and any other surprises? Because I think people are really interested in your experience in this at this site.
Um, well, okay, so one of the surprises is how much was done by hand. That was a
Hmm.
big revelation, a big way for me to enter into this story, knowing it was a story. That's when I really knew, because it wasn't just about a building or about building materials. One other thing that happened near the beginning too was that when I walked on the site, um, I was surprised by how big it is. Um,
Hmm.
wasn't really expecting that. And the peaceful nature of the way it sits on the river. So it's this industrial, you know, place, but and it was full of construction materials, but it
Yeah.
was had a very peaceful quality to it. There's the river flowing, there are the bridges and the skyline, just sort of where it's set. And then you start thinking about the history of the place, and all what
Hmm.
happened there and how that impacted Chicago and our, economic growth from 100 years ago when we were powered by, salt and meatpacking and lumber industries. And this was kind of a window into that past. And then to have things sort of flip when you take, as you know, when you take a site by the
Yeah.
river and change it from industrial to back to either, recreational or, something that is not any kind of industrial use, you're
Mhm.
helping to conserve that piece of the river. And so we have all these miles of river that are
Mhm.
and be turned back to the people and turned back to more recreation, and they're environmentally sustainable. So whatever you think of this project, it's good for sustainability, both in the building industry and both, and also for in, natural, for our natural resources. So
Mm.
that was another.
That yes, I mean that's an incredibly helpful perspective on the relationship to the river, because I think that when this building was built and so many other pieces of our industrial heritage are um, oftentimes not considered for reuse of this type, and it's really a testament to the visionaries who saw that this place could be something else. The Blue Star Properties and 16 on Center, who are the developers of this and who allowed you, as you said, to be on the site. They saw what this place could be, and if you can do it here, I feel like you can do it anywhere. So, your book is also, I think, telling the story of adaptive reuse and how it's possible to transform just about anything if we're creative enough. So has this helped you to look differently at anything else? Do you have a different perspective now, because we're showing the photos of that the salt shed is now a concert venue, it's an event venue with access to the river. Are there other industrial places now that you're looking at differently?
I think I've always had a love for industrial spaces, always had a love for preservation, and know just a little bit about our city's history with preservation and some of the, battles that were lost and battles that were won. One of my photo heroes is Richard Nickel, and he was devoted to documenting and trying to save really, really important buildings in Chicago. Um, but it has made me look differently at buildings. I think there's a quote in the book from an architect named Eric Lasher, who helped design the theater, really worked on the theater aspect of the salt shed. It contributed so much. And he had a really lovely way of saying that, it's not just, you lose if you take something down, you're really tearing apart the fabric. Cities evolve, buildings do come
Mm-hmm.
and go, but if you take down whole pieces of the fabric, it really is like a theft for future generations.
Yeah.
Saving it kind of restores our sense of place. And I know that's so
Mm-hmm.
important to landmarks. And I just do want to thank the salt shed owners for, giving me permission to be on site, to be able to get to know the people, tell the stories, really try to get it from as many angles as I could. And then to the Driehaus Foundation for seeing the work as
Mm.
a part of our work to elevate the built environment in the city.
Yes, well, because initially this didn't start off as a book idea. As you said, you started photographing. So let's take a moment to do book promotion. So tell us how did this become, a book? When did this go from the idea of a project into a book? And maybe there are some people on this, who are listening to this, who are interested in their own book projects. What advice would you give them? Can you tell us a little bit about the path to get this published?
Yeah. Well, I probably wouldn't recommend the way I did this,
Okay.
just to be
So maybe what
truthful.
not to do.
Yeah, I could probably lead a whole class in that, but actually, I just really knew it was a good story, but I didn't know what it was going to be. So I have to, be transparent about that. Probably about 8 months in, I started showing the work, maybe 6 to 8 months in, to some other people, some photographers, and then an editor or two who I knew. And, Rich Cahan had been a photo editor and
Yeah.
published his books. And he's, you know, he thought there was something there for a book. And I had thought that. I thought, you know, this might be able to be a book. So, you know, I thought about it every day. I wrote about it. I had been taking notes. I had a little journal, and I just turned those into ways of speaking about this project to try to express and communicate the value that I think it has. And then the Driehaus Foundation did award the work, a grant to produce and publish it. And at that point, I had a publisher as well, which is Trope Publishing. They do beautiful photography and art books, and they are a Chicago-based publisher, which I love. And
Okay.
everybody involved pretty much you know, sort of near and dear to the city and what we do here. But you know, I also think that this story has universal themes. You know, Bonnie, I wonder if you think that as well, that we all, you know, communities have to grapple and manage their empty spaces, their empty civic spaces, abandoned buildings. You know, what happens to them? Maybe we can't save every one, but you know, will more people think of creative ways to save their buildings in their own communities? I mean, that would definitely be one of my hopes, is that, you know, we could have more dialogues about this, you know, bringing that to light, that it's really important for neighborhoods, for cities and communities everywhere, you know, to be creative. You know, not everyone is going to be a music venue. Not everyone is going to be a museum. You know, you have to work with the needs and desires of communities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, you know, Sandra, you touch on a vital point, and this is one of the reasons we have, you know, we celebrate this kind of work, and the awards program that we hold is because it's oftentimes very difficult for someone who hasn't been in a preservation field as long as we have to see what something can become. It's, you know, it's the idea of turning a salt shed into a music venue takes some creativity. And so not every community has experienced the amount of preservation work as, of course, as Chicago, but even in other communities, it might be challenging to make a market case for some of these things unless you can prove that it's been done in other communities. So this book, I see this book as advocacy. You know, it is really advocacy and model creating so that other communities can bring this book to the city council and say, look, this can be done. It has been done. That is one of the best advocacy tools that we have, is showing that it can be done. And the transformation, you know, when you get there, everyone supports it. I just want to say that everyone jumps on board and says it was wonderful, but it is those who, you know, who have the courage to say, when you have a vacant building in front of you, that it can be something different. Those are the folks we love to support the most and give them these kinds of models. So I see it as advocacy, but I want to ask you, what do you want this book to accomplish?
Well, first of all, I do want to say, you know, I do address, even though it's really about the people who, you know, the pictures, you know, really show the work. I do address the creative vision that it took for, you know, Craig Golden and Bruce Finkelman of Blue Star and 16 on Center to make this happen. And you know, I do address that the developers had to find creative ways to keep this building, you know, keep the billboard, keep the sign, keep the building. So it takes that before you can do the work. So I did just want to make sure that people know that that's in the book too, that is addressed. But so what I do hope that that people will, you know, gain like a greater appreciation and understanding for some of these buildings and for what they can do for our communities, and gain a greater understanding of what it takes to do it. And you know, when you pass by people working on the street, that, you know, you'll think that you'll maybe have a better understanding of what their day is like and what they bring to our lives. I think that is I think it just, there's a way to make sure we have our sense of place going into the future. And the work that you do at Landmarks is so important to that view that I share with you. And I would love to use this book
Hmm.
for advocacy and for, people to
Hmm.
be excited about the trades and going into trades, and for there to be very practical uses as well as artistic uses of the work.
Well, it is a phenomenal work, and one which I'm sure you are, but we would say that this is a something of pride. So that's truly something that is contributing to our cadre of resources that we can use. And so, it is. We want to thank you for the incredible time that you put into this, for this remarkable storytelling, for all of the people who told you their stories, and we're seeing the end result right here in this photo. And I know you just had the debut. You just had a big party around the release of the book. So two questions before we go to our Q&A is number one, the practical, where can people get this book, Sandra? And two, what is next for you?
Yeah. Thank you. I just also want to thank you so much for having this conversation. It's so much fun. I want to tell people that as much work as it took to do this, to get the book done, and to, I also wanted to thank I thank the owners, I thank everyone, but I also want to thank the tradespeople and everyone on site who let me
Mhm.
photograph them and who let me interview them and who, opened themselves up to me. There's no photography, no project without that. So okay, so the book is available on the publisher's website, trope.com. It's available in
Mhm.
bookstores like around Chicago on the south side, Seminary Books on the north side, Unabridged, I think Women and Children First. There's a new bookstore
Mhm.
called Slant of Light Books in Old Town. And it's also online at bookshop.org and, of course, Amazon. Yeah.
Mhm. Thank you for highlighting our local booksellers.
Yes.
So I know they would appreciate that. And
And the
of course, we have
booksellers.
people,
Yes.
yes, people from all around the country, who can access this at any time
Absolutely.
since we're recording this. But we're all curious, what's the next project?
Well, I'm still interested in the trades, and so nothing has actually emerged definitively yet. But I think in our early conversation, Bonnie, we also talked about women in trades and
Yes.
other minority groups that are a part of the trades. But I'm interested in some of those stories. And
Mhm.
I am also spent about a year documenting the Four Seasons of the Japanese Garden in on the wooded island
Mhm.
in Jackson Park. And I would love to do something with that body of work as well. So stay tuned.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Well,
and people
we
can
are
follow
looking
me
forward
if they
to.
do on Instagram. I think that'll be somewhere in the slides. And I just want
Perfect.
to thank everybody for listening. It's just a pleasure, and it was a fun project too.
Mm. It looks like it was fun and you enjoyed yourself. And so, with that, we want to ensure that our audience can ask you questions. So, we've saved, let's see, about 7 minutes here for questions. So, I'm going to turn it back over to Frank Butterfield. Frank, have there been questions that have come in at this point, or have we answered everything in this conversation?
You've answered quite a bit, but there's a question here about sort of the nuts and bolts of making this type of project happen. What sort of permissions and from whom did you need to be on the construction site every day? Did you need insurance and who paid for it? Did you have to sign a waiver? Did you wear a hard hat? Like how does this happen?
Well, number one, permission from the owners to be on site. It's private property. I'm an independent photographer, independent documentary photographer. So I carry my own insurance and it's, whatever business liability, I pay for it. I got releases from all the everyone I spoke with. I got releases. I just carried my photo release, which I had worked on with an IP lawyer, and I had that with me all the time, and I pretty much got everybody. There are a few I didn't, and I had to track down some people later, but it's much easier to do at the beginning. So yes, I had a hard hat. It was in my car at all times, and boots and everything you need. And I still have it in my car because you never know. Did
And
that
just a
cover
quick,
it?
yeah, and quick follow-up to that too. I'm just curious with the release. Did people just, oh, that's great, yeah, happy to sign, or was there a little like, what am I signing here?
Yeah, that's such a good question because if I see a release, it's got all that, some legal language. I try to keep it to one paragraph, but I just said, listen, I'm doing this. It may turn into a book or a photo exhibition or get published somewhere. So are you comfortable with that? And most people, like I said, were so happy that I was photographing them. They just hadn't had that opportunity. A few people were, um, but there may be a little bit of a language issue. And then when they went to their foreman, we worked it out. So almost there was as maybe just I don't know, one person who said no, but really, this project, people were very happy to talk with me, to work with me. I really think it's testament to the space it takes in our city, like the cultural kind of place it has in our memories and in our lives that an iconic space like this made everyone kind of interested in what I was doing.
Frank,
And
can
then
I
just
just
to,
take a
oh, go
moment?
ahead, please, Bonnie.
Everybody, just a moment that we try to address when we use acronyms. So Sandra, you just said IP lawyer, intellectual
Oh,
property. Just wanted to make sure I
yes,
defined
sorry.
if you're out there thinking about doing this, you need to talk to an intellectual property attorney.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good idea just because, and also this was not the kind of project where I wanted to catch anyone off guard. It was really about what is happening here and why does it matter. So I think I tried to get that across to people.
And then just I want to highlight there's a comment that came into the panelists that really, or emphasis on people here that just want to praise your work on bringing such humanity to this work and intergenerational awareness of trade workers are connected to their families and highly skilled and supported by their loved ones. So the commenter called out the 10-year-old's note in the lunchbox, reflecting that sort of human drama and the narrative being so strong and remarkable. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yes. We also, Sandra, we have a comment just again, really, thank you for such an interesting presentation and your photos, which are incredible. So can you talk a little bit about the layout and the function of the buildings on the site from the overhead shots? I don't know if we want to pull anything back up for you, or can you describe it in words?
I think I could describe it if you don't get to it. Well, I think the site, if I remember correctly, is 4.2 acres. So as it sits, along the river, the North Branch of the Chicago River. And oh, that's great. Yeah. So the way it was built on a former tannery, and there were many such kinds of operations around the turn of the century. But Morton Salt moved there because Lakeshore Drive was going to be built, and so they had to move out of their original building. But this actually there was a twin shed that was attached to the where you see the sign. There was another shed, and that one was not repairable. That one had to come down, although they saved a piece of it, which is sort of the backdrop to their outdoor stage. And then the packaging buildings, which are actually attached, were used for, so the salt would come in off the river, up through a conveyor belt into that top area, which is called the monitor. And then it would drop down onto the shed floor and then come into the packaging buildings for, packaging and processing. And then there were offices in there as well. And an amazing boiler, which I have a photo of, and I did not include it in this particular group, but it is in the book. And it's just gorgeous, from Erie, Pennsylvania, just something you only see in these kinds of buildings. It takes up a room. So does that kind of answer that question about the layout? Oh, and there was a freestanding garage closest to the river, which is now Goose Island's brewery. They used to fix the, repair trucks and machinery in there.
Sandra, I think that's a wonderful job describing what we're seeing in this photograph as well. And, the site, you can access the site, of course, if you go to a concert there. But do you know if the site is public, if somebody is not attending a concert?
Yeah, I know that there's a whole, there's a, I guess I could call it a program or an intention to have community events there. So there are times to go. I think you can walk the site especially if there's a concert, there's a lot of security and there's, the musicians and artists buses and there's a lot going on. But if there isn't a concert, they also have, I think, yoga and they have markets and they have community types of events. So there are ways. I don't know exactly, the schedule of how you get in, but there are ways to definitely access the site.
So our last question, there was just a question about continuing education credits, everyone. We do not offer continuing education credits because at this point, we haven't asked AIA Chicago, for example, or the structural engineers for permission. I think there is a self-reporting opportunity. So if you need more information, if you want to self-report, you can ask us. But the last question to you, and then we're going to go back to Frank to close it out. So Sandra, you said that the place made you happy. Did your pleasure and growing comfort on this site change your intuition as an artist?
Wow, that is a great question about something that probably a lot of us think about. Yes, absolutely. I learned, first of all, to move carefully, which I already, knew, but especially on a construction site, you have to move very carefully. And so, in enthusiasm for getting pictures, you could hurt yourself. So there was that sort of way of moving slowly, but then that translated also into the way I worked, which is like, sort of letting images come to you, letting things reveal themselves. And I think that happened in the garden too, the Japanese garden. And so it's something that the work at the Morton Salt buildings kind of let me explore more. And I would say it's definitely changed me and how I work. Yeah.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing what else comes. And for my part, thank you so much for a wonderful conversation. And I'm sure more to come. But we'll turn it over to Frank to close us out. Thank you again, Sandra.
Thank you all so much.
Sandra, Bonnie, thank you for sharing these narratives and stunning photographs with all of us. And Sandra, congratulations on the book release for the Salt Shed. Salt Shed is available now in stores and online wherever you buy your books. Again, thank you and congratulations. We hope that you enjoyed today's Preservation Snapshots lecture with Sandra Steinbrecher. Please visit our website to register for the remaining Preservation Snapshots lecture on November 12th with Al Watts from the Preservation Partners of the Fox Valley. Al will discuss the Alexander Brothers Blacksmith Shop in Geneva, Illinois, which was listed on Landmarks Illinois' most endangered list in 2018 and listed again in 2023 because of it's once again threatened with demolition. If you haven't purchased your ticket to the awards next week, now is the time. Please join us on Friday, October 18th for our annual Landmarks Illinois Richard H. Driehaus Foundation Preservation Awards ceremony. Since 1994, we have honored individuals, organizations, projects, and programs whose work demonstrates a commitment to historic preservation. As you can see, the Salt Shed is one of this year's winners. This year, the ceremony will be held at historic Apollo's 2000 Theater in Chicago and will feature a sit-down award ceremony and a cocktail reception. A generous grant from the Richard H. Driehaus Foundation enables Landmarks Illinois to present awards for exceptional efforts in preserving, restoring, and revitalizing historic places in Illinois. On our website, you can purchase tickets and see a list of this year's winners, including the Salt Shed. Since 1995, Landmarks Illinois has published an annual list of historic sites in Illinois that are threatened by deterioration, lack of maintenance, insufficient funds, or inappropriate development. We will begin accepting nominations for our 2025 list on December 10th. Be on the lookout for that announcement. Our work would not be possible without our donors and sponsors. If you want to support Landmarks Illinois, please become a member and donor and help us continue to help people save places. If you'd like to sponsor the Snapshots lecture series or another initiative, we have opportunities, so please contact us. Our staff's information is on landmarks.org, and we are happy to discuss them with you. Sandra, thank you. Bonnie, thank you. And thank you to our programs manager, Layla Wills, for producing today's presentation. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We'll see you again soon. Take care.